Welcome back to the Literacy Lunch Break. We are excited to chat with Sandra Chen today. She's the Supervisor of Student Services and Programs at Hamilton Township School District. Thank you so much for joining us today, Sandy. We would love for you to share just a little background about what got you into education and then really what led you into the role of leadership at the district level.
Hello. So thank you for having me. I really appreciate being invited, and I'm excited to be here. Yes, I'm Supervisor of Student Services and Programs in one of the largest districts in New Jersey. So that's pretty exciting. I started as a general education teacher, fourth grade, and immediately went back to school because I knew that special education was really my passion. From there, I got my certification as a learning disabilities teacher consultant. And seeing the change I could make in that role, realized that I really needed to go back to for administration. So I have my supervisors, I have my principals, and in January, I will be starting my program for my superintendent certification. So that's kind of exciting. What got me into education, really was just from a young age, love of learning, love of teaching and working with children. My grandmother was a school social worker, so that was exciting. I got to visit her and just, really knowing that I wanted to be in a building to make change.
I love that you started as an educator, then you said you went right back, you went back right away. I feel like that's exactly what so many of us did, right? And you really wanted to make a change. You really wanted to make that impact, and that's what led you to leadership. Mm-hmm. Which is so amazing. And really, that's what we need, leaders that want to make a change. We talk a lot about literacy. This has been a conversation, obviously, for the Literacy Lunch Break, but oftentimes we focus on the reading aspect of literacy, and there's not a whole lot of conversation around writing. So I'm really excited to have you as a guest because you recognize this need to really zero in and focus on writing and kind of make some shifts. And I would love for you to share just what brought that to your attention. What made you recognize that you needed to start to focus on writing and target that? And then we'll ask some follow-up questions because I know it wasn't an easy process, especially when you think of being in such a large district.
Yes, definitely not an easy process. But when we started looking at student performance, you're correct. Everyone focuses on reading and math and yes, thinking that writing will just come along when we learn how to read. But that's not necessarily the case, right? Like they are two completely different content areas that require their own individual instruction. So what we started to do was look at what our current reading curriculum had, as well as what our teachers were using. And so we found that, one, they were using Teachers Pay Teachers because their actual reading curriculum didn't have really much writing instruction in it. And then some of our classrooms had framing your thoughts. So that was a little bit better. But as we started to review student writing, we realized we are definitely not seeing our students progress in writing as they're progressing in reading. So what are we missing out on here?
Yes. Yeah. And so I love that you targeted that. You recognize that. I think, I share often. I started as a sixth grade reading and language arts teacher. And I remember, give me the reading, I'm all in, even though I had a lot to learn. But the writing was always kind of the scary piece for me because I'm like, how do you teach this, right? So as you started to look at what was available for writing instruction, what were some of those first steps? What did you use to evaluate the available resources for teachers? We'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
So we actually started with a questionnaire that went out to our staff, asking them what they felt their students needed support in terms of writing instruction and what they felt would work for them. So that kind of guided our search for writing instruction. The teachers that were using Framing Your Thoughts were obviously feeling a little bit more supported, yes, but that wasn't everyone because it did kind of give some guidance, but we felt like our students were still not progressing even with that. So we kind of started to look for programs that were similar in that aspect, but more engaging.
Yes.
Some of these programs are very dry,
Yes.
and students are already hesitant to be writers, especially
Right.
when they're younger or they're struggling. So we wanted something interactive, engaging, that brought in their own interests while building um, their writing skills.
Yeah. Yes. So did you, as you started to identify some resources, were there certain classrooms that maybe piloted some, okay.
So we had our classrooms that were using Framing Your Thoughts, and then we piloted Heritage Bridge to Writing in our LLD classroom. So as a supervisor for special education, that's kind of the classrooms that I work more closely with. And we felt like, besides the fact that our writing instruction and programming is lacking, these students are already falling behind,
Yeah.
struggling to
Right.
keep up. So we looked at our LLD classrooms, and as a large district, there's 14 of them. So it was not a small pilot.
Yeah.
And, we kind of jumped all in with the Bridge to Writing, and the students loved it. The teachers enjoyed it. And so, kind of from there, we looked at both of those two programs, knowing what we had and what we could have, and everyone was kind of on board with jumping 2 feet in.
Yes. And I love that, because this series really, our previous series talked about a leadership, and then, we are focusing on writing, but that leadership aspect is so critical in every component of education. And, I just heard you say, first we sent out a survey, right? First we found out, what are you using? What do you need? What are you what are your students, in need of? And really that provides that buy-in, and then you're giving them the opportunity to try something. And I think that's so impactful and so important. And we know that then once we adopt a curriculum, that's not enough, right? Like, great,
Never.
we've got a great resource, but in order to truly make it effective, we need strong professional development. So as we, and in professional development really can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And I think, one of the pieces is that consistency. Would you share just a little bit about how you're supporting teachers throughout the year to be able to implement any curriculum well?
Yeah. So, we're fortunate that we have many PD days built into our district calendar. So staff will start soon with their initial professional development for Bridge to Writing. From there, we're going to be implementing that in the classroom with follow-up trainings in November and March. But also, we have found that an in-classroom coaching model really is the best way to support our teachers. We've done it with a couple of other programs, especially in our special education department, and we have kind of created model classrooms that the coaches go into, they help set up, they help support, and then we can have our other teachers kind of go in and observe to make sure that we are all on the same page. We are supporting our students to the best of our abilities, and we're really utilizing the resources that we have the way they're meant to be utilized.
I love that. I think that's so impactful and so important. Not just that initial training. I think teachers in the beginning of the year, like, give them the initial training, get the implementation. Like, how do I get started? I'm just trying to get through the year, right?
That's exactly
but as we move through, throughout the year, really that sustainable support and having somebody be able to coach you, to model for you, or to observe and provide feedback is just so impactful and so critical. So that's very, very exciting. As you think about the changes and really, what we know is any changes we make, we always want to keep a pulse on how that's going. How are we measuring success? Can you chat a little bit about, or share a little bit about, how, because I think that's one of the scary things about writing too, right?
How do
you measure it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously we use a lot of rubrics, right?
Yep.
So our teachers will be sitting down with their Bridge to Writing materials. and kind of going through that to determine how we are consistently going to be monitoring student progress, right? We started to look at it a little bit during the pilot, but now that we're going to have all of the resource and the materials online, all of that fun stuff, really going to take the time to kind of put that progress monitoring piece in place. So reviewing what each of our lessons are looking like daily and weekly, and how we want to see student growth.
That's great. And I think that, when you put it that way, it's actually like, yep, that makes a lot of sense and isn't so scary, right? I think when we think about writing, one of the nice things when we think about assessment is everyone can be writing at the same time, right? It doesn't require that individual, I have to take a student out, I have to pull them into the hallway or someplace quiet and listen to them read, or, ask them certain questions. But the teacher time to then evaluate, is there time built in for them to have collaboration? Is that something that's happening with the coach?
So we set this up kind of in a couple of different ways. Yes, we'll have some time with the coach, but also we will be including this as part of their PLC. So we kind of take our special education teachers out of the building-based PLCs, and we use that PLC time once a month to go through this, to collaborate. So even though they might be in different buildings, they'll all come together. We can share student writing, look at kind of how each of us is evaluating that progress, and give each other support.
Yes, I think that's so important, right? Those conversations, again, because some of it is subjective, and so that you're able to kind of make sure we're all thinking similarly and looking for the same pieces. I think one of the things we always like to ask is, thinking back, right? You've started this process, you started the change. If we have administrators listening to this, or, even teachers within a district that recognize writing is an area of need, this is something they know needs to be a larger focus, but it is just a little bit, harder, just a little bit, muddier to tackle, I think. What are some recommendations you would say for first steps?
First steps, reach out to your teachers.
Yeah.
See what they are thinking and feeling about writing in their classroom, because they're on the front lines. We're not there every day. We can't be there every day, especially if we're going across multiple buildings. We need to trust them and know that they know what they're doing. They're professionals, they're educators, and they can help guide us. They can tell us what they need. They can tell us their students' strengths and weaknesses, and they know what they need. And I think that's the biggest, most important step, really listening to our teachers and giving them the opportunity to be the professionals that they are.
I love that so much, to give them the opportunity to be the professionals that they are.
Yeah.
So clearly stated, but I think so important. And I think, again, as you say that, I love hearing that, because it's not only, you're absolutely right, they're on the front lines, but if we're going to make impact, if we're going to make change, it has to be a collaborative effort. It has to be a team effort. And that is how you get the willingness to stop, reflect, have discussions about what's happening now, where do we want to go, and how do we get there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I cannot thank you enough for joining us today on the podcast. We can't wait to hear how your year goes. Hopefully we can invite you back and get an update, but thank you so much, Sandy.
Thank you. This was amazing.
Be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for our upcoming episodes, where we explore literacy topics in a snack-sized, easily digestible format.